Fire it up, footballers. James here coming at you. We're going to be talking. Oh, yo, what's up, DBG? Oh, I will hop. I'll hop onto I'll slide into the Discord as well. But trickle in, everybody. We're going to be talking about Arlo White and his decision to join LIV Golf, the LIV Golf Tournament, which is co-owned by Greg Norman and the Saudi Public Investment Fund. So Arlo White came out with an announcement today that he was going to be joining. Let me find this tweet for you, folks. Bear with me. Apologize. We're live. Bam. Arlo White. And it was a career move. People were wondering what's going to be happening with Arlo White because he won't be going on with NBC Sports for the next TV contract, or so for the EPL season, for the oncoming EPL seasons, and what was going to happen with Arlo White. So it came out today that Arlo White will be joining LIV Golf. And that is a upstart, brand new golf organization. What's up, Connor? What's up, DPG? Hopefully you guys can hear me now. Thank you for hopping in here, guys. I got everything open so we could have a little discussion about this, talk about this, see fans react around the world to this, because I was having people that never talk about soccer talk to me about this, and they don't know that I talk soccer. And so, I mean, this was big news as far as I could see. Chat and folks here. Welcome, everybody from MLS, Chicago Fire fans. We're just talking about this. We're going to get into it. I've done some background reading. I've done quite a bit. I've studied public policy. I don't know if that helps, but it helps more than you think, because if you didn't study public policy, you're coming at it from a different angle. So Greg Norman, the two-time major champion, is the current CEO of LIV Golf currently. Hello, phone is at 1%. It's going to die. I'm going to sleep. Good night, Christopher. Good luck. Enjoy. Make sure you hit that like button. But the thing is there's a lot of controversy that goes in with this decision, because the owners are the Saudi Public Investment Fund, the Saudi Arabian Government Public Investment Fund, who is also the owner. That is how they went and bought Newcastle United over in the English Premiership. So currently, the Saudi Arabian Government is an owner in the English Premiership, Soccer League. What does this mean? How does this impact? This is global business. So why are we seeing a backlash against Arlo White in this? DBG is supposed to compete with the PGA. DBG's correct with that. They recruited Dustin Johnson, and it looks like Phil Mickelson might be joining with sometime soon. That has not happened yet, I believe, as of at the current moment. Check the news if I'm wrong, by the way. And this is all alleged. This is my best shot at the information, so I'm doing the best I can with this information. Thank you very much. That's my warning. The Saudi connection inside the night. Ooh, we can get into that later, because, I mean, it's a hard question to ask, but this is a true question to ask. Is Arlo White in bed with alleged terrorists? Is Arlo White in bed with terrorists? No, not as far as we know, because that is what the FBI has said, and we'll go over the cases that are in question, but also there's recent developments that bring different angles to light, bring different things to light of the case. So let's get into it, chat. So, I mean, of course, you may have heard of Saudi Arabian government for what they did to Jamal Khashoggi, a Saudi dissident journalist who they killed. And it later came out killed. It was like a cover up for a little bit, and then it came out that they murdered him. I don't think I'm going to be monetized on this one, boys and girls. So let's not worry about that. Let's just get into the truth of the matter and the facts of the situation. That happened. It was not a good situation. It was not a good look for the Saudi Arabian government. All the same, Saudi Arabian government provides the world with oil. It's a major contributor to oil and OPEC. Saudi Arabia, correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, by the way, DPG saying he was out of a job and took the job that probably brought a truckload of cash to him. I heard, and DPG is correct. It probably brought him a truckload of cash. Now, some people criticize this move, saying, how could you sell your soul, so to speak, to the Saudi Arabians and go work for them and agree to, and also some people, not everybody has that. I mean, and it's tough to say about this, maybe about Arlo White, maybe because maybe he's been more privileged than most, but all the same, not everybody has the ability to live their life to the nth degree of living out their moral high ground. Sometimes you do have to make sacrifices, and I think that goes for the world. Everybody in the world makes sacrifices. The world, as we see it, is not ideal. So in order to deal with that non-ideal world, we make some sacrifices, and so perhaps this is a sacrifice that Arlo made. We'll get into that. So Arlo White going to be joining LIV, which is part owned by Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia just mentioned the Jamal Khashoggi thing. Questionable human rights conditions, human rights violations in the past, including 81 people murdered overlooked because of the need for cheap oil. This is from ABC News on March 15th, a few months ago. This was reported. The mass execution of 81 people in one day by Saudi Arabia, condemned by activist groups as a massacre, condemned by activist groups, but not governments. Have you noticed that? Let's read between the lines. By the way, I'm pretty good at reading the news, so if you guys want to come along for the ride with me, I'll help us read the news as best I can. I studied history, studied politics, I studied a lot of this stuff, so comes I feel I have a developed lens to be able to look at this stuff and discuss it with you guys in a fair way. Has prompted fresh fears that the kingdom's human rights record will once again be overlooked amid global energy crisis. And that seems to be the case. Although, who knows what's going on right now at the pumps, because pumps are expensive. TPG saying, tons of people work for corporations that enslave kids in factories or steal the land for the poor. DPG is totally correct. Tons of people wear Nike shoes or tons of people use Amazon, and both of those companies' pasts very murky. Do some research and do some digging into that, and you'll see questionable human rights violations in Amazon's past for certain. And I know we've all heard of questionable things done by, we've heard from Nike as well. This is all alleged, but you guys know what I'm talking about. So, but at the same, the world goes around by business. How do you, so say you own a hotel, how do you exclude people from going to that hotel? It's hard to do. So that's a bad example. I'm trying to figure out a good example to parlay. So, because business in this regard is trumping morality, and we see that bear out time and time again, and it irks a lot of us humans, for right or for wrong. But it's something that we also have to deal with, because business is what makes our lives happen, and business is what makes the world go round. Business is how we're able to have these discussions here on YouTube. A business that is outcompeted the rest. So I mean, this is an interesting, nuanced discussion, to be certain, because Saudi Arabia has done some horrible, questionable things, and I even mentioned some of the big elephants in the room. We'll be getting there, chat, and this is a big conversation. So, the Saudi Arabian government is corrupt. Apparently, Qatar will be giving death penalty for people trying to smuggle drugs to World Cup. We'll double check that right now. Qatar death penalty, World Cup. Fans who smuggle cocaine into Qatar. This is from News18.com. Where's News 18? Let's just double check where News 18 is coming from. CNN. Oh, I'm getting connected to CNN. All right, so this is connected to CNN here, guys. News 18 is. Anyway, so News 18. Fans who smuggle cocaine into Qatar World Cup could face death penalty. The warning of arbitrary arrest has been issued to prohibit the use of cocaine in the upcoming FIFA World Cup. The warning issued for traveling supporters extends also to those in close proximity of drug users. So if you're in close proximity to somebody who's using drugs or smuggling drugs, you also could get in trouble, even if you are not taking those drugs or seen talking with that person. Hence, this is an issue. This is a human rights issue. Why are we having the World Cup here? Why are we having the World Cup in this place, chat? The decision comes in as cocaine has been identified as a significant component of numerous adversities related to football in the recent past by Chief Constable Mark Roberts, the National Police Chief Counsel's lead for football policing, said. The Euro 2020 final saw massive drugged and drunk supporters pile into the streets, causing havoc and chaos in the city of London. Hundreds of fans without tickets also tried to force their way into Wembley Stadium. Over 20 people were arrested by the Metropolitan Police on the night of the final. Fans considering taking drugs to Qatar have been warned that if they are caught in possession of illegal substances such as cocaine, they could face some serious consequences. People who smuggle drugs into Qatar will face up to 20 years of imprisonment and a hefty fine of roughly 21,000 pounds to 64,000 pounds under the law, blah, 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 blah. And repeated offenders could be sentenced to life imprisonment or even death. Chief Constable Mark Roberts confirmed that the UK police confirmed that they would be cooperating completely with the officials in Qatar to snuff out any smugglers at the tournament. Any fans seen to be misbehaving could also be subject to a football banning order on their return to the UK, as well as being arrested and potentially charged for offenses committed in Qatar. Holy cow, chat. Thanks for that information there, Christopher. Also, many people die from making the stadiums. Yes, I've heard that as well, allegedly. Allegedly as well. Tar death. Stadium building. This is The Guardian. Let's go with NPR. WBEZ Chicago NPR report reveals more than 6,500 migrant workers have died in Qatar's World Cup prep. And this was just last year, chat. This was last year. Not even taking the last 12 to 14 months into account. 12 to 15 months into account. That is questionable, chat. So anyway, let's get back to Arlo White, Saudi Arabia, and the fan reaction. So we heard this reported first from Brian Sandelau, and so he was one of the reporters. We were looking at what he was writing here at Chicago Sun-Times. Link will be in the description. Why are the Fire sticking with Arlo White? Arlo White, who works a handful of Chicago Fire games and co-hosts a team-produced podcast, joined the controversial Saudi-backed LIV Golf Tour as its lead play-by-play announcer. June 6, 2022. The Fire say they are sticking with Arlo White, even though the famed broadcaster has joined the controversial Saudi-backed LIV Golf Tour as its lead announcer. Knowing what LIV Golf is linked to, and we'll get into that in a little bit, why is keeping White around worth it for a struggling franchise like the Chicago Fire? White, the former voice of NBC's Premier League coverage, was reportedly being dropped last month, works a handful of games on WGN TV when his schedule permits. He also hosts a team-affiliated podcast with regular play-by-play announcer Tyler Terrence. Via Instagram message, White told the Sun-Times that he is delighted to still be calling Fire games this summer, but declined to comment on any potential backlash on joining LIV Golf. The Fire declined to comment further, then confirming White is still a part of the club and that they were aware of his decision before it became public. When the Fire first brought in White in 2020, it seemed like a significant victory. A team trying to rebuild its good name in the city had landed a voice any soccer fan in America knew. You knew Arlo White. You knew him from Ted Lasso. If you followed Ted Lasso, you knew him from the Premiership. To make it even better, White is an avowed Chicago sports fan who speaks fondly of the Bears and Cubs. He also has a recurring role on Apple TV hit Ted Lasso, further adding to his celebrity. He's real awesome to watch on Ted Lasso. He's a joy to watch that, and you hear his voice ringing through, and you're having a fun time. So it was interesting that it was possible that Apple TV might be in the running to get MLS rights. So it was wondered, will Arlo White possibly become the voice of MLS broadcasts if Apple TV were to strike and get the MLS TV deal? More on that later. But after Monday's announcement, White's name and reputation could be permanently tarnished in many people's eyes by working for LIV Golf and who's funding the operation. If indeed the Fire follow through and keep using White, which they have supposedly under contract for the rest of the year, they will be gambling the goodwill that they might have built for just a few matches and podcasts. Productions that would feature a voice plenty of listeners will now associate with something beyond soccer. By doing that, the Fire risk undermining the community work that they've done, including some initiatives that would be opposed by the Saudi LIV Golf financiers. The Fire would also be giving publicity to somebody who takes a check from people notorious for trying to use sports to paper over their horrific crimes. This is called sports washing. With former major champion Greg Norman as its CEO, LIV Golf is bankrolled by the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. We brought that up earlier. LIV Golf has been labeled as an example of sport washing, a term that means repressive governments that are using sports to sanitize their image to the rest of the world. The Saudi government is responsible for numerous human rights offenses, including torturing and murdering journalist Jamal Khashoggi. I believe I'm saying that right. If I'm not, please correct me if I'm wrong. In 2018, and carrying out the mass execution of 81 men earlier this year. We covered that article earlier in the show. The Nation Tour has used its unlimited bank account to recruit golf stars, including Phil Mickelson and Dustin Johnson. PIF was accused of trying to sports wash last October when it brought Premier League side Newcastle United, sparking outrage in England. Directly or indirectly, these golfers and Newcastle supporters who embraced their club's takeover have tacitly associated themselves with a potentially brutal regime. White has done the same, joining a startup league that's so toxic it hasn't yet secured airtime on an American broadcast network. Instead of finding a deal, the first LIV golf event this week in London will be available in the United States only on its website, YouTube, and Facebook pages. Others who have joined LIV Golf have faced consequences for their actions. One example is Phil Mickelson, who called the Saudis scary fucks to get involved with, but still supported the project and subsequently lost endorsement deals despite his former standing as one of golf's most marketable stars. At least for the time being, it seems like White's voice will still be heard on Fire broadcasts, even if it will be incredibly difficult for the Fire to market him now. We take a look at fan response to this here on hashtag CF97. Jake saying, I don't agree with how the Saudi government operates, but some of this is making it seem like Arlo is the country's president. Can we just focus on the soccer and why Chicago Fire suck? At the end of the day, I don't care who's calling the matches and just want the team to win. I think that's a fair opinion. I think he had another good one too. Nick saying, Chicago Fire would have gotten steamrolled in an antitrust suit. Brian a little confused by this, huh? They always have the option of just paying him and not using him. Remember, they bought their way out of Bridgeview and they are owned by a billionaire. Frank Cardina saying, Arlo who? Brian saying, star of Ted Lasso. The cricket manager? Rugby union, actually. I'm intrigued now. Hash saying, a ridiculous controversy. Our whole economy is intertwined with the Chinese government, which is far worse than the Saudis. I think that's a fair point. Justin Whitty saying, Arlo explains the problems himself in episode 17 when talking about Newcastle. Episode 17, Arlo breaks down the issues himself. That'll be an interesting listen. You might want to check that out. So, wow, said Brian Sandelau earlier, which is what caught my eye. Brian saying, I usually don't begrudge people for taking the bag when they can, but this is different. The Fire need to cut ties with White over this. The response will be very telling. And the response was to retain him. Mando saying, I definitely understand that, but man, I enjoyed listening to Arlo. Adam saying, woof, Arlo. So some Fire fans not too happy with the look. Some fans not wanting to worry about it, not wanting to think about it because they want to worry about the Fire. Some fans a little bothered by it, a little perturbed by it. I think these are all fair positions to have. Dago Camacho saying, this is a sad moment. I actually liked Arlo's style in work. The Fire can't catch a break when it comes to disappointing news. Joshua was saying, I don't follow golf at all, but is it the Saudis owners that elicit the response? Yes, it's sports washing, says Brian Sandelau. Jack Example saying, what does that mean? I'm unfamiliar with that term. Well, we went over that in our article, but Brian Sandelau reiterates, we're using sports to camouflage or disguise human rights violations and other kinds of offenses. David saying, pretty disappointed considering Arlo spent a lot of his time on his podcast questioning Saudi government ownership in Newcastle and talking about human rights violations that immediately went the other way. Then immediately went the other way when they offered him the bag. Willie saying, quite disappointed. It must have been quite a bag, since I don't believe he would have been out of work in any case. We don't know that for sure. We can speculate. He's got teenage daughters, which might play into it. I can't support sport washing anywhere. Why stop at government? Some of us, however, I heard this, another comment I heard was that some people can't afford to live their life by their moral high ground. Sometimes they have to make compromises and sacrifices, some uncomfortable ones that they might not want to. And when you look at the world of business, I think that happens a lot, especially in the world of business, because you might not be operating with people you might not like personally. I mean, but it's business, transferring of funds, transferring of money. And so there's a lot of fair, nuanced opinions coming out over Arlo White's jump to the Saudi-backed LIV Golf Tour. We're wondering how you are feeling about the situation. Comment below. We're happy to read your comments and take a look at the response. But when we wonder about the serious offenses and why a number of people are concerned about these links, about these vested interests, about the ability that, about the thing that Arlo White might not be able to say some of the things that he might normally would have said because of the new owners of the network that he just signed on to. Like such as if it's Gay Pride Month. Maybe they don't support the Gay Pride initiative, and all of a sudden, maybe that means Arlo White is unable to do anything supportive in that vein as well. So these are the potential impacts of making that choice that Arlo White did. Also, potentially, he might get another platform, a new apparatus to make changes as well. Is he able to maybe bring and highlight issues that are going on in Saudi Arabia, in Qatar? I don't think he's going to be able to do that. I mean, he's hired to talk golf, to talk sports. He's not hired to talk politics. You got to go to CNN and CNBC and MSNBC and Fox News and all those sites for the politics. Arlo White is not on those channels, guys. Arlo White is on sports. They are hiring him to do sports. So I can see that as another fair point, that he might, even though the Saudi Arabia government might not be the best government in the world, certainly doesn't look like it to me, even though they might have numerous human rights offenses, and there's other governments out there that have numerous human rights offenses, and they still do business with America and United Kingdom and the world. Russia, China, the list goes on and on, allegedly. I don't know how much business we're doing with China at the moment, or I don't know how much business we're doing with Russia at the moment. I think there's a lot of moratoriums and bans on doing business with these nations that are at war over in Ukraine. But this is the weird world we live in 2022. So there was some recent news. So back in 2007, the 9/11 Commission came out and reported that the Saudi government did not have a role. There was found no evidence that the Saudi government as an institution or senior Saudi officials individually funded Al-Qaeda to conspire the attacks on 9/11 or that it funded the attackers. That was what came out in the 2004 final report on National Commission of Terror Attacks from upon the United States. And that was one of the final words that we initially had heard about that. But there are recent events. So Saudi Arabia terrorist financing issues, according to the U.S. and this is also from 2008, so this is not too long. This is right around that same time period, but it talks about times before and times after. According to the U.S. State Department 2007 International Narcotics Control Strategy Report, Saudi donors and unregulated charities have been a major source of financing to extremist and terrorist groups over the past 25 years. It's coming from another U.S. report. So is this conflicting with what we just heard? Potentially, but also maybe not. Let's dig further. The September 11, 2001 attacks fueled criticisms within the United States of alleged Saudi involvement in terrorism or of Saudi laxity in acting against terrorist groups. The final report released by the Bipartisan National Commission on Terrorist Attacks upon the United States, the 9/11 Commission, indicates that the commission found no evidence that the Saudi government as an institution or senior Saudi officials individually funded Al-Qaeda. The reports also states, however, that Saudi Arabia was a place where Al-Qaeda raised money directly from individuals and through charities, and indicates that charities with significant Saudi government sponsorship may have diverted funding to Al-Qaeda. U.S. officials remain concerned that Saudis continue to fund Al-Qaeda and the other terrorist groups. In April 2008, Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence Stuart Levy told the Senate Finance Committee that the Saudi government is serious about fighting Al-Qaeda in the kingdom, and they do, and argued that Saudi officials' seriousness of purpose with respect to the money going out of the kingdom is not as high. He added, Saudi Arabia today remains the location from which more money is going to terror groups and the Taliban, Sunni terror groups and the Taliban, than from any other place in the world. That's from Stuart Levy, Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence. Staudi officials insist that their counter-terrorist financing efforts are robust and are not limited to targeting domestic threats. In numerous official statements, Saudi leaders have said that they are committed to cooperating with the United States in fighting terrorist financing, pointing out that Saudi Arabia has been a victim of terrorism and shares the U.S. interest in combating it. Saudi leaders acknowledge providing financial support for Islamic and Palestinian causes, but maintain that no official Saudi support goes to any terrorist group organizations such as Hamas. Al-Qaeda affiliated terrorist attacks in Saudi Arabia from 2003 to 2006 appear to have given added impetus to the Saudi leadership in expanding counter-terrorist financing efforts. Since 2003, the Saudi government has set up a joint task force with the United States to investigate terrorist financing in Saudi Arabia, shuttered some charitable organizations suspected of terrorist ties, passed anti-money laundering legislation, banned cash collectors at mosques, centralized control over some charities, closed unlicensed money exchanges, and scrutinized clerks involved in charitable collections. A planned National Commission for Relief and Prevention Act and the implementing recommendations of the 9/11 Commission Act, President Bush has submitted strategies for U.S.-Saudi collaboration with special reference to combat terrorist financing. For more information, check that out. Blah, blah, blah. It gets deeper. That's just a little overview. So that's an issue. It's murky at best. Have these guys supported terror in the past? Yes. Have there been found links to supporting terror? Yes. Says Levy. Right here, Stuart Levy told the Senate Finance. But also said that the Saudi government is serious about fighting Al-Qaeda. So it's interesting. So there's a lot of money going into terror in Saudi Arabia. And because of that, Saudi Arabian government is putting a lot of money into fighting terror. And that is what we're being reported by the Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism, Stuart Levy. So that's interesting to note, but still hotbed for terrorism in a way, concerning. And then many human rights violations that are simply overlooked because of their position in OPEC and their need for cheap oil. The murdering of a journalist in full view of the public, essentially. It was just blatant. So these are the lists of problems that people are concerned about when it comes to this decision. But however, as people have also pointed out, Arlo White is not the Saudi Arabian government. He is not the president of Saudi Arabia. He did not make those decisions. He's merely making a business decision where he can get paid and take money back to his family. However, therein lies the rub. Some of us might be able to be a bit more choosy with how we're able to make our money, and maybe we're able to stand our moral high ground a bit more, but other people are not able to do so for right or for wrong sometimes. So that's where it looks like what's going on. That's what seems to be going on with Arlo White, chat. Let us know what you guys think. Happy to read your comments. Happy to hear your opinions on the matter. There's many articles about the Saudi connection inside the 911 case that divided the FBI, an intense article. But at the end of it, they found that there was no link. It just was, but the link was questionable. It divided the FBI for years. And then we have this recent development. Let's get to the most recent development. Newly released video shows 9/11 hijackers with alleged Saudi intelligence operative. Well, I guess that would be more relevant if you guys knew the relevant information. Let's go to the top. On the morning of September 11th last year, about 24 family members of those killed with the terror attacks filed into the White House to visit with President Trump. It was a choreographed, somewhat stiff encounter in which each family walked to the center of the Blue Room to share a moment of conversation with Trump and the First Lady, Melania, before having a photograph taken with the first couple. Still, it was an opportunity the visitors were determined not to squander. One after another, the families asked Trump to release documents from the FBI's investigation into the 9/11 plot. Documents that the Justice Department has long fought to keep secret. After so many years, they needed, and you'll see why that they asked for that, because in the next article, U.S. citizens had to go through the UK government in order to be able to get some of these documents that they were asking the Justice Department to be able to release so that they were able to better make their case. After so many years, they needed closure, they said. They needed to know the truth. Some of the relatives reminded Trump that President Bush and Obama blocked them from seeing the files, as did some of the FBI bureaucrats the president so reviled. The visitors didn't mention that they hope to use the documents in a current federal lawsuit that accuses the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, an American ally that has only grown closer under Trump, of complicity in the 9/11 attacks. The president promised to help. It's done, he said, reassuring several visitors. Later, the families were told that Trump ordered the Attorney General, William Barr, to release the name of a Saudi diplomat who was linked to the 9/11 plot in an FBI report years earlier. Justice Department lawyers handed over the Saudi official's name in a protected court filing that could be read only by lawyers for the plaintiffs. But Barr dashed the family's hopes. In a statement to the court on September 12th, he insisted that other documents that might be relevant to the case had to be protected as state secrets. Their disclosure, he wrote, risked significant harm to the national security. The families were stunned. They knew that the success of their lawsuit might well depend on access to the FBI's investigation into possible Saudi involvement in the plot by Al-Qaeda. In a federal courthouse in Manhattan, near where the Twin Towers once stood, the fight over evidence had already dragged on for more than a year. Now, as the judge prepared to rule on what documents would be disclosed, the Justice Department was digging in. Daniel Gonzalez wasn't surprised by the hard line. A former street agent in the FBI San Diego field office, he was one of several retired investigators who had signed on to help the families. During the last 15 years of his FBI career, Gonzalez was a central figure in the Bureau's effort to understand Saudi connections to 9/11. But even on the inside, Gonzalez often felt as if his own government wanted no part of what he was finding. From the day of the attacks, the trail seemed to point to Saudi Arabia. First, there was the inescapable fact that Osama bin Laden, 15 of the 19 hijackers, first, there was the inescapable fact that, like Osama bin Laden, 15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudis. The first two flew in to Los Angeles in January 2000 and quickly made their way to a Saudi mosque. When they moved to San Diego a few weeks later, they turned for help to a middle-aged Saudi student whom the FBI suspected of spying for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. But as details of the 9/11 plot came into focus, the FBI line on possible Saudi involvement began to shift. When the evidence was assessed, FBI officials reported there was no solid proof that the Saudi government or any of its senior officials deliberately aided the al-Qaeda terrorists. Low-level Saudis with government ties might have helped the two hijackers in California, the Bureau acknowledged, but there was no indication that they knew the men were terrorists, much less planning the murder of thousands of Americans. Gonzalez knew that he hadn't seen all the evidence. He had just a corner of an investigation that stretched around the world. American intelligence agencies surely had pieces of the Saudi puzzle that even senior FBI officials might not be aware of. But what Gonzalez uncovered was troubling, and he knew that bigger questions about the plot were still unanswered. My head was already flat from banging it against the wall, he recalled, but I thought, we're not done. Gonzalez, a tough, affable Texan, pressed on. With a small group of like-minded investigators in New York and California, he hunted down witnesses who had slipped away and circled back to clues that had been missed. The evidence they developed was nearly all circumstantial, but it added to the questions about the role of the Saudi government. The FBI had disputed the idea that foreign policy considerations significantly influenced its investigation. However, I'm reading differently in this New York Times Magazine article, it seems to be suggesting. In interviews, current and former Bureau officials and federal prosecutors insisted to us that they would never have hesitated to pursue any Saudi who could have been solidly linked to the 9/11 plot, even if that person never faced trial in the United States. Side note, Saudi Arabia does not extradite its citizens. I have never been privy to discussions about not charging someone for 9/11 because we need to maintain a better relationship with the Saudis. Jacqueline McGuire, a special agent in charge of New York, who was closely involved in the case from the beginning, told us, I've never heard of charges be questioned for that reason. But others who worked on the matter, including some at the FBI's highest levels, say that the United States' complex and often troubled relationship with the Saudi regime was an unavoidable fact throughout their investigations. Even as the Saudi authorities became more cooperative with the United States in fighting al-Qaeda after 2003, they were minimally and grudgingly helpful when it came to the 9/11 inquiry. According to current and former officials, requests for assistance that might rattle the Saudi security agencies were frequently balanced against FBI and CIA needs for Saudi help against continuing terror threats. How such considerations might also weigh against the appeals of the 9/11 families for a fuller record of what happened remains an open question. If anything, the transactional nature of America's relationship with the Saudi kingdom has become more overt. In December, following the terrorist shooting by a Saudi Air Force officer that killed 3 Americans and wounded 8 others on a Florida naval base, Trump tweeted that he said there were assurances from King Salman that this person was in no way, shape, or form represents the feelings of the Saudi people. Earlier last year, addressing the Saudi government's murder of Saudi columnist for the Washington Post Jamal Khashoggi, Trump argued that such offenses should be seen in a broader context. I'm not like a fool that says we don't want to do business with them, Trump told NBC News. Washington's efforts to keep secrets about possible Saudi connections to 9/11 have also intensified. Former FBI agents have made court statements in support of the 9/11 families have been warned. Former FBI agents who have made court statements in support of the 9/11 families have been warned by the Bureau that they risk violating secrecy laws. Kenneth Williams, a retired agent who wrote a prescient memo before 9/11 about radical Arab students taking flying lessons in possible preparation for hijackings, said in a sworn declaration for the plaintiffs that an FBI lawyer told them that the Trump administration did not want him to help them because it could imperil the, quote, good relations with Saudi Arabia, quote. The FBI declined to comment. The full story of the FBI's investigation into Saudi links to the 9/11 attacks has remained largely untold. Even the codename of the case, Operation Encore, has never been published before. This account is based on interviews with more than 50 current and former investigators, intelligence officials, and witnesses in the case. It also draws on some previously secret documents as well as the voluminous public files of the bipartisan 9/11 Commission. The Encore investigation exposed a bitter rift within the Bureau over the Saudi connection. It illuminated a series of missed opportunities to resolve questions about links between one of Washington's closest allies and the deadliest attack in the nation's history. Richard Lambert, who led the FBI's initial 9/11 investigation into San Diego as the assistant special agent in charge there, says he believes that even if the FBI's evidence of possible Saudi involvement in the case is not conclusive, it is significant enough that it should be fully disclosed. The circumstantial evidence has mounted, he said. Given the lapse of time, I don't know of any reason why the truth should be kept from the American people. Sound concerning to you, chat? Sound concerning to you, everybody? Images of the World Trade Center's collapse were still looping on television sets in the FBI San Diego field office when a lead came in from Dulles International Airport outside of Washington. A blue 1988 Toyota Corolla had been found in a parking lot. It was registered to one of the suspected hijackers of American Airlines Flight 77, which took off for Los Angeles the previous morning before crashing into the Pentagon, killing 64 people on board and 125 inside the building. The hijacker, Nawaf al-Hazmi, listed a San Diego address. Interesting side note about that airplane crashing into the Pentagon. If you could handle such images, try and find it. Gonzalez caught the lead. At 42, he had been in the office for a decade, building a reputation as a shrewd, instinctive agent with a gift for getting people to talk. He had worked very effectively against Mexican drug traffickers and corrupt border control agents, and he pivoted easily to the new target. He was a phenomenal agent, Lambert says, what you would want to see if an agent knocked on your door. He just kept going and going and going and going and going. The address from Dulles led Gonzalez to a plain white 2-story house in the working-class suburb of Lemon Grove. The listed owner was a 65-year-old Indian immigrant, Abdusattar Sheikh, who had taught English as a second language at local community colleges and helped establish the Islamic Center of San Diego, the city's largest mosque. Gonzalez hurried back to prepare a search warrant at the FBI office where snipers had taken up positions on the roof. It was chaos, recalls William D. Gore, who was then the special agent in charge of San Diego. Nobody knew where the next attack would be. When Gonzalez returned from the Lemon Grove house the next day, a small army was mustering an evidence collection team, computer experts, and a SWAT team with protective gear and a battering ram. Before they could get to the door, however, the professor politely opened it for them. It would be more than a week before anyone told Gonzalez that Dr. Sheikh, as he liked to be called, was in fact a longtime informant for the FBI field office. Sheikh's FBI handler would later acknowledge to Justice Department investigators that the professor had mentioned the two hijackers to him, but only by their first names, noting casually that they were the latest in a line of young Muslim men who rented his spare bedroom. Even had the agent dug further, he might not have discovered that Sheikh's boarders, Khalid al-Mindar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, were known Qaeda operatives whose names were in the databases of both the CIA and the National Security Agency. While CIA officials placed the two men under surveillance in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in early January 2000 and learned that at least one of them flew out later to Los Angeles, the agency did not alert the FBI to their presence until August 2001, just a few weeks before the attacks on 9/11. As the raid proceeded, Gonzalez escorted one of Sheikh's new boarders outside. The young man got to know Hazmi a bit at the Texaco gas station where Hazmi briefly worked washing cars. But the guy whom Gonzalez should try to find, the boarder said, was another young immigrant who was especially close to the two Saudi men. His name was Modar Abdullah. Gonzalez set up a 24-hour surveillance at the Texaco station and began searching for Abdullah. The next day, as Abdullah drove into a student parking lot at San Diego State University, Gonzalez pulled up alongside of him and identified himself as FBI. "What took you so long?" Abdullah asked. "I thought you'd be all over me sooner." Gonzalez and another agent invited Abdullah for breakfast at a Denny's just east of campus. The diner was one of the spots that Abdullah liked to go with the two hijackers. Just up the hill on Saranac Street, there was a two-bedroom apartment they rented, where they often whiled away their days with Abdullah and a rotating crew of young Muslim men. Nearby was a small mosque where the three men worshipped under the guidance of Anwar al-Awlaki, the Yemeni-American imam who would emerge as an important Qaeda leader before being killed in Yemen by a United States drone attack in 2011. Over the next 3 days, Abdullah, then 22 years old, sketched a picture of the hijackers' California lives. Praying daily at the mosque, going for pizza at Little Caesars, playing pickup soccer. Abdullah, translator, Ali Grengel, tell them the truth about the Denny incident. Is there more truth about the Denny incident? Let's find out. Let's see if we can find something here on the Google. Denny's. Denny's 9/11. I don't know if you're sidetracking me with this, but I'm not seeing much here. Look into the Denny incident and who. Oh, okay, there we go. Jeffrey Rothman. There we go. Oh, we got. Whoa. Whoa. Denny's. Jeffrey Rothman. Not seeing anything yet. Tell them the truth about the Denny incident. So it's hard for me to find the truth if I am not seeing the truth. Here, Denny's. Let's go back to the article because we got their names. Why don't we look for Jeffrey Rothman plus Abdullah? Let's take Abdullah's name. And we do this live. Modar Abdullah. Jeffrey Rothman. How do you like them apples? Interesting, eh? Maybe there's nothing, or maybe you're onto something. I don't know. Allegedly. Back to the article. Over the next 3 days, Abdullah, then 22, sketched a picture of the hijackers' daily lives, playing soccer, blah, blah, blah. Abdullah translated, eating pizza at Little Caesars, playing pickup soccer. Abdullah translated for the two Saudis, drove them on errands, and registered them for English classes. He also tried to arrange flying lessons for the pair. At a San Diego airfield in May 2000, they told the instructor they wanted to skip past the single-engine Cessna and learn to fly Boeing jets. He broke off their training after the second lesson and advised them to come back when they could speak better English. Midhar, who was 24, left for Yemen in June 2000 to see his wife and new daughter. Hazmi, 23, talked to Abdullah about finding a wife as well. Computer searches suggest he was seeking a young Mexican woman who would convert to Islam. Although the Saudis were discreet with strangers, they clearly had strong views about United States support for what they saw as corrupt puppet regimes around the Arab world and Israel's oppression of the Palestinians. Allegedly. Midhar also admitted to Abdullah that he had been involved with a Qaeda-linked group in Yemen, but they seemed to understand little about American life and didn't have much desire to learn. Abdullah later said he was introduced to Midhar and Hazmi by Omar al-Bayoumi, a well-connected Saudi who Abdullah knew from local mosques. Bayoumi pulled him aside, Abdullah said, and asked him to help the two newcomers settle into their lives in Southern California. After a couple of long interviews, Gonzalez was sure that Abdullah was telling the FBI less than he knew. He was a bright, garrulous guy and had made his way quickly since coming to the United States in 1998. He seemed to appreciate the opportunities he had found, but he also struck Gonzalez as a hustler. He insisted that he was horrified by what the hijackers had done, and he had no idea that they could have been involved in anything so heinous. But he also had seemed to have been sympathetic to the Saudis' ideology, Gonzalez thought. Perhaps even their defense of Muslims' duty to carry out jihad. Gonzalez could understand such conflicted feelings. He had seen that with informants before, but he was skeptical that a busy student like Abdullah would have done so much to help the visitors out of a mere brotherly feeling. The agents also learned that Abdullah lied on his United States visa application, claiming to be a war refugee from Somalia when he was in fact an Italian-born Yemeni who came into the United States from Canada. When Gonzalez told Abdullah he would need to take a polygraph, a fairly standard practice with important but unreliable witnesses, he initially agreed, but later changed his mind. Gonzalez tried to hold off his bosses while he urged Abdullah to reconsider. By then, however, even the special agent in charge in San Diego was no longer calling the shots. It was not a local decision, Gore recalled. Those were made in Washington and New York. On September 21st, another SWAT team descended on Abdullah's outside big box electronics store, handcuffing him at gunpoint in the parking lot. Gonzalez thought it was overkill. I had been building something with Modar, working him, he recalled. But headquarters says, you've got a guy who hung out with the hijackers. What if he blows something up? What if he blows someone up? Within days, Abdullah was gone, flown into New York for questioning by a federal grand jury. He was never charged in connection with the attacks, but he was indicated on a charge of immigration fraud and moved to a federal lockup. Gonzalez approached him again over the next 2 years, but got nothing more after a public defender advised Abdullah against further cooperation with the FBI. The relationship was over. Even before Gonzalez found Abdullah, agents began searching for Bayoumi, the hijacker's mysterious Saudi friend. His name turned up repeatedly on bank documents and as the co-signer of their initial San Diego lease on the Parkwood Apartments where Bayoumi also lived. Bayoumi, 43, was already known to the FBI. An employee at his previous residence had contacted the field office to report some strange goings-ons. Large gatherings of young Arab men, a package that came from Saudi Arabia that had wires sticking out of it, and no customs papers. Some suspicious wiring that a maintenance man found under Bayoumi's bathroom sink. In September 1998, the FBI opened a preliminary counterterrorism investigation. What do you think of the Department of Justice? I feel like that's a loaded question, right? You know what I mean? Hopefully, we need them to make justice the goal. Getting justice. It seems like there's sometimes mistakes made. Seems like there's room for improvement. Little about Bayoumi added up. Although he identified himself as a graduate student in business, he rarely went to class. He drew a monthly stipend from a Saudi contracting company, but the firm was a conduit for money coming from the Saudi Defense Ministry, where Bayoumi had worked in civil aviation. At local mosques, he was known as a glad-hander, who often pulled out a video camera to record gatherings. Agents learned that many worshippers suspected he was a Saudi spy. FBI officials eventually came to share that view. Our best assessment of him in San Diego was that he was a spy for the Saudis, says Gore, who headed out to the office. But the Bureau closed its preliminary inquiry in June 1999 without questioning Bayoumi. Even if he was doing intelligence work without the official cover of a diplomatic post, former FBI officials say he would probably not have been charged with any crime because he would not have been spying for an allied government, because he would have been spying for an allied government. Investigators also worried that a more aggressive pursuit of Bayoumi might tip off local men he knew who were suspects in another FBI counterterrorism investigation. What do we think of the Department of Justice? Need to improve. I mean, if you want, we could dig into the prisons, prison reform, the need to fix some of these issues. Like, I'm not so sure that the prison system is currently working to help reform people, to help bring them back. It seems like the system we have might create more. It might hurt more than it helps, but also, I don't know yet. I have to look more at the statistics. I'd have to look closer, but it seems like there's problems. When you just have an outsider's view of it, it seems like there's problems. By the time the FBI began searching for Bayoumi again, right after 9/11, he had decamped to Birmingham, England, with his wife and children. At the FBI's request, he was detained by agents of New Scotland Yard on September 21st, 2001. Although he was ostensibly studying for a doctorate in business ethics, his main job seemed to be running a Saudi student association. The Kingdom Security Services often use such groups to monitor students for dissident activity. FBI agents flew to Britain in the hope that they would be able to interview Bayoumi. If they gathered sufficient evidence, they thought they might even be able to bring him back to the United States. Because of British police protocols, the FBI agents were not allowed to speak with Bayoumi directly, however, and instead had to forward their questions to the British detectives. Bayoumi was hardly a forthcoming witness. He claimed to have met the two hijackers by chance after hearing them speak Gulf accented Arabic in a small halal cafe in Culver City, California. When Midhar and Hazmi told him they didn't like Los Angeles, Bayoumi said that he suggested San Diego. When they turned up a few days later, he claimed he showed them hospitality he would have accorded any Saudi brother. Such a casual acquaintance seemed at odds with the efforts Bayoumi made to help the two youngsters. Such a casual acquaintance seemed at odds with the efforts Bayoumi made to help the two strangers. And given that Bayoumi claimed to be a mere graduate student, former FBI officials told us that they were struck by what they say was pressure on British officials for his release by the Saudi embassy in London. After 1 week, and before FBI officials had a chance to fully review the documents and videotapes seized in a search of Bayoumi's home, he was freed. He was not asked whether he had a relationship with Saudi intelligence. He was not asked. They didn't want him to have to lie. After returning to Saudi Arabia the next year, Bayoumi was employed by the government in civil aviation again. In late 2002, a pro-government Saudi newspaper reported that the FBI and Scotland Yard had cleared Bayoumi of all wrongdoing. But United States authorities had already revoked his visa on the grounds of quasi-terrorist activities. In San Diego, Gonzalez continued to sift through the circle of people that had known Hazmi and Medhar, and it became clear that Bayoumi spent a good deal of time with the two hijackers, and that he received a significant increase in his government stipend around the time that he met them. There was never any proof, however, that he helped them financially. In fleshing out the details of the hijackers' lives, Gonzalez found that they seemed to have money, but they lived frugally, moving out of the Parkwood rental for the less expensive room in Lemon Grove. They also seemed to have been careful in their communications, generally using payphones, for which FBI investigators were ultimately unable to recover call records. In the spring of 2000, Abdullah and others told the FBI that there were two Saudis became interested in a couple of American Muslim converts who were stationed in San Diego with the United States Navy. Midhar and Hazmi reportedly quizzed the sailors about their life on a Navy destroyer, the USS John Paul Jones, and whether the ship's guns were loaded when they docked in port. Around the same time, another Qaeda operative linked to the two Saudis was helping to organize a suicide attack that would kill 17 sailors upon the John Paul Jones' sister ship, the USS Cole, in a Yemeni port in October 2000. That's months after. That's absolutely crazy. That's nuts. So the 9/11 hijackers potentially helped provide information that for a suicide attack that killed 17 sailors above the John Paul Jones sister ship in October of 2000. They did this while they were in America. Throughout this time, Hazmi and Midhar were living in plain sight. They used their real names on their bank account, on their vehicle registration, and on their California driver's license they obtained. Hazmi was even listed in the San Diego telephone book. None of this prompted CIA officials to inform the FBI of their presence in the United States. The FBI's 9/11 investigation, which was given the ungainly name of Pent Bottom, a reference to the Pentagon and the Twin Towers, eventually compiled a detailed chronology of all 19 hijackers' movements, financial transactions, and other activities. But the agents were frustrated by one gaping hole in the timeline. They could not account for the first 2 weeks after Hazmi and Midhar landed at Los Angeles International Airport on January 15th, 2000. The arrival was the first major step in bin Laden's plot to attack the United States, and it was a risky one. Both young men had trained and fought as jihadists in Bosnia and Afghanistan. They were known to the NSA and the CIA, as well as to Saudi intelligence, which passed on some background information about them on to the Americans. Even so, they flew to the United States under their real names, passing through immigration with a tourist visa stamped in their Saudi passports. The mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, would later claim to CIA interrogators that he sent the two men to Los Angeles without any contacts at all. An assertion that both the 9/11 Commission and Danny Gonzalez found improbable. So let's think about that, chat. They're going to send their first two men, there's two scouts with no contacts. The 9/11 Commission and Danny Gonzalez both find that very improbable. Neither of the two Saudis spoke English. What little they knew about life in the West came mostly from a crash course in Pakistan, in which Mohammed tried to teach them to read airline timetables and telephone books and showed old Hollywood movies with hijacking scenes. Documents from the investigation show that even Mohammed doubted they could get the job done. But after gathering their duffel bags and clearing customs at LAX, Midhar and Hazmi managed to disappear. If closed-circuit cameras followed them through the airport's international terminal, or if anyone came to meet them, no recording has ever surfaced publicly. And FBI agents on the case said they did not see one. When FBI agents canvassed dozens of hotels around Los Angeles, they found no evidence that the Saudis stayed at any of them during those first 2 weeks. So where were they? In its detailed report on the plot, the 9/11 Commission wrote simply, "We do not know where they went for those first 2 weeks in America." Just drop the link to the article. I'll put that link in the article in the vid. Dropping it in the vid. Got 2 links. Got a couple links for you. There's that. There's this. All the sauces. Thanks for hanging out here and get into. I'm sorry that I can't be more forthcoming with what I think about the DOJ, but you ask me other questions and I'll certainly try. That one that's like a loaded question because I mean, here comes the story of the hurricane. The man the authorities came to blame for something that he never done. Put in a prison cell, but one time he could have been the champion of the world. So, you know what I mean. There's problems, but there's room for improvement. Let me get some of these articles in there for all you fine people in the chat. Sauces are saved. All right, that's updated. Oh, Jesus, this goes on forever. But it's fun reading it. All right, so long story short, they said it looks like there are, but they can't be sure. They just said it right there. The first 2 weeks are unaccounted for. They didn't stay at a hotel, but yet they didn't have any associations in America, according to the person who sent them. The 9/11 Commission and the agent Gonzalez both have reasons to doubt that. Now we come to today. Newly released video shows 9/11 hijackers with alleged Saudi intelligence operative. While President Biden signed an executive order last fall to declassify 9/11 evidence, the families of some 9/11 victims say they had to go through British courts to get records and videos seized 2 decades ago from an alleged Saudi government operative that had never been public until now. April 27th, 2022 is when this article was written. Why did it, and this is from CBSnews.com. Why did it take 20 years for this information to see the light of day? Brett Eagleson told CBS News. He's leading a group of families fighting for the documents. He was 15 years old when his father, Bruce, was killed in the World Trade Center South Tower. And 20 years later, he wants his children to know what he calls the secret of 9/11 and who was behind the plot to kill their grandfather. Will the Justice Department now explain to the families and to America why they did not pursue charges against Saudi national Omar al-Bayoumi, who that whole article was just about? And most astonishingly, why does this information come from the UK government and not our own FBI? Less than 2 weeks after 9/11, boxes of evidence, including personal notes and videos, were seized by British police from a home in Birmingham, England. Buried inside the trove was a home video from 2000, now being seen publicly for the very first time. The event was described in 9/11 Commission records as a party at the San Diego apartment of Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midhar, who we were just talking about in that last article, the first 2 hijackers to arrive in the United States in January 2000. While the 2 hijackers apparently avoided the video camera at the party, a handful of frames captured Midhar in the kitchen. Along with Hazmi, their team would later commandeer Flight 77 that slammed into the Pentagon. The party's host, Saudi national Omar al-Bayoumi, was arrested by British police less than 2 weeks after the attack that killed nearly 3,000 Americans in New York, the Pentagon, and Shanksville, Pennsylvania. British police seized the videos and documents from Bayoumi. 3 years after the attack, the 9/11 Commission said, "We have seen no credible evidence that he, Bayoumi, believed in violent terror extremism or knowingly aided extremist groups." Through a newly declassified and heavily redacted FBI memo from 2017 stated in the late 1990s and up to September 11, 2001, Omar al-Bayoumi was paid a monthly stipend as a co-optee of the Saudi General Intelligence Presidency via the ambassador Prince Bandar via bin Sultan. The memo continued allegations of al-Bayoumi's involvement with Saudi intelligence were not confirmed at the time of the 9/11 Commission report. The above information confirms these allegations. Let me just read that again. The memo that we were reading, in the news we were reading, allegations of al-Bayoumi's involvement with Saudi intelligence were not confirmed at the time of the 9/11 Commission report back in 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2004 when it initially came out. The above information confirms these allegations. Another recently declassified FBI memo from the same year citing source reported, there is a 50-50 chance Omar al-Bayoumi had advanced knowledge of the 9/11 terrorist attacks were to occur. Declassified records pertain to a long secret investigation codenamed Operation Encore, which was centered upon the 2 hijackers who lived in San Diego and who may have assisted them. Retired FBI Danny Gonzalez, who worked on Operation Encore, told CBS News last fall that he believes Bayoumi was part of the hijackers' U.S.-based support network. He helped them with apartments. He helped them with bank accounts, Gonzalez told CBS News. Gonzalez and another former FBI agent, Ken Williams, are working on behalf of the families of some 9/11 victims in their litigation against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Williams wrote a memo before 9/11 that warned potential terrorists were taking flight lessons in Arizona. Williams said he was also an employee of the government of Saudi Arabia. Williams said, who's he talking about? Okay. He's talking about Bayoumi. Williams said Bayoumi was also an employee of the government of Saudi Arabia. According to the spokesman of the 9/11 families, the British file contains over 14,000 pages of documents, more than 20 hours of video, and as many hours of audio and as many hours of audio interrogations of Bayoumi by British counterterrorism police. As part of their lawsuit seeking money from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, CBS News has learned that some of the 9/11 families said that they subpoenaed the FBI for the Bayoumi records in 2018, adding only a fraction were provided by the Bureau and are under seal, which means that they will not be publicly released. Among the records released by British authorities was a notepad. At first reported by CBS News in August 2021, the FBI twice quizzed an American pilot in 2012 about the significance of the hand-drawn plane and mathematical equation. According to a sworn declaration for the court, the pilot said it might be used to view a target and then calculate the rate of descent to the target. I shared with the FBI my opinion that there was a reasonable basis to believe that the drawing and equation were used as part of the preparations for the Al-Qaeda terrorists to carry out the 9/11 attacks, Navy veteran and pilot Robert M. Brown said. In another video that is believed to be before 9/11, Bayoumi is seen warmly greeting and embracing the American Muslim cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, who has also supported the hijackers in San Diego and then in Virginia in the months before the 9/11 attack. Al-Awlaki was later killed in a CIA drone strike in 2011. Al-Awlaki was the first American targeted for death by the agency as a senior leader of the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Yemen, which was responsible for failed plots, including the attempted 2009 underwear bombing of a passenger jet on Christmas Day 2009. Al-Awlaki is also blamed for the radicalization of Americans throughout his digital propaganda and the rise of homegrown terrorism. Al-Awlaki first comes into contact with the hijackers here in San Diego. He next comes into contact with them in Falls Church, Virginia, Williams said. He believes that support network in Southern California for the hijackers was mirrored in Virginia with Al-Awlaki. He follows them across the country, or they follow him across the country. To what depth he was involved, to what extent was he involved? We're looking at that right now in our work with the lawyers for the plaintiffs, Ken Williams said. Some of the 9/11 families are suing Saudi Arabia. The Saudis deny involvement, and the 9/11 Commission report found no connection. However, we just read earlier the reason that they found no connection is because they didn't maybe have this information, or they may have suppressed this information. It's unknown what was said, because we read the earlier article saying that some of this stuff was known, and it made an embattled FBI office that made it very, very hard. How do we stop? Oh man, that's okay. Well, that's a good question. Some of the 9/11 families are suing Saudi Arabia. The Saudis deny involvement, and the 9/11 Commission found no report of connection. Report found no connection. Bayoumi is believed to be living in Saudi Arabia. CBS News tried to reach him through the Saudi embassy. It did not immediately respond to our questions, but last fall said in a statement, any allegation that Saudi Arabia is complicit in the September 11 attacks is categorically false. And that is the statement from the Saudi Arabian government. The FBI declined to comment. CBS News asked if the Bureau would consider reopening its investigation to Bayoumi and why the 9/11 plaintiffs had to go through the British courts to get the records and videos rather than getting them from U.S. law enforcement. It's a good question. And a crazy article from cbsnews.com, link in the description here. So that colors a lot of people's views of what is going on with this move with LIV Golf. They're picking up of golfers like Dustin Johnson and Phil Mickelson. They're bringing on of commentators like Arlo White. But what was behind that? What was the money behind that? Is that this Saudi public investment fund? It is. It's been confirmed. Now, the investment fund is a business apparatus for the government. It's business. So it's how do we stop all of it? How do you stop it? If you want to stop the world, you stop business, but you don't want to stop business. But how do you stop the bad things? How do you stop the bad things from happening? How do we help people be nicer to each other? How do we help people be kinder all over the world? How do we get people to feel vested in the globe, the world? People over in the Middle East, South America, Asia, what have you, America, how do we get everybody to care about each other? How do we stop all this? I mean, I wish I had the answer for you, chat. I've heard this asked by world leaders. I mean, this is one of the questions to life, to the earth. How do we make it so people don't want to do that? How do we de-incentivize humans' rights violations? How do we make it so? But you would think that you would think that there has been de-incentivization. There has been massive changes. I mean, the way the world does business is not the way the world did business 2,000 years ago. There are similarities, but it's so electronics, blockchain, digital currency, all these types of things are all changing the way business is done and the immediacy and the speed. It's a hard question, chat. I wish I had the answer. Because, I mean, how do we stop all of it? All the bad stuff. But the terrorism, the people hating each other, wanting to kill each other. That's just unfortunate. Man, heavy topic, chat. Let us know what you think. I think we're going to end into it, and we're going to have a little fun now. Yep, I think so. Wow, chat. I think that's about all I got to say on it. I don't know where else to go. Have to look on Twitter, see how people are responding, and I feel like we've already done that. We've seen that people are not pleased, people are not happy. Some people are not worried about it. Some people don't care. Some people didn't raise their... But to me, this one's interesting because the people who are responding are not... It's a wide assortment of people. It's not any people of one political ideology that's like responding to one side. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem like it's so put to a group. It doesn't seem like it's a clique thing. It's like wider spread than that. The people that aren't pleased with this development going on with Arlo White joining LIV, but also there are other people that say, hey, that's business. Other people say, why are we going to punish Arlo White when we didn't punish the English Premiership when they allowed the Saudi Arabia government to use the same fund to purchase Newcastle United? They were allowed to do it. The United Kingdom government did not stop that from happening. So why should Arlo White be criticized for going to work for somebody who's going to pay him to comment on a sport that he loves? Now the problem is who's paying him, and that's a fair problem to have. Sometimes who's paying you is a legit problem. If you getting dirty money's dirty money, and then to some people dirty money isn't dirty money, and it's relative. It's fortunate to say, or maybe fortunate. Crazy thing about all this stuff is like a lot of people have to ride the fence when they talk about these news events. A lot of people have to approach it from the middle because that's how you see all the angles. That's how you kind of get to the truth of the matter. You shine a light on it from all angles, above and below. That way you could see the shadowy parts. You could see the dark, murky parts. You could see all the well-lit parts that are clean. And you could also take a look behind, just get a better look of what the situation is. And I'm hoping that this podcast helped do that for us, helped us get a better look at what this Arlo White situation is. This LIV golf group asking him to go do play-by-play commentary. Is it as big of a deal as Brian Sandelau is making it with this article? Is it big enough for me to have a YouTube video and a whole podcast and for us to talk about it with chat? Well, it was news, and it absolutely was warranted for this article, this discussion is warranted, and that's what we want to have, a discussion. Do we agree with Arlo White's choice? I don't think we have to. And we don't have to agree with it. He's living his life. Does it affect us at the end of the day, him speaking for the Saudi government? Maybe in an indirect way. Maybe it does. Let us know in the comments below if you believe so and how that's possible. We're happy to read your guys' comments, chat, live or after the fact. Let us know where you guys are thinking about this. Where do you guys fall in this situation? Do you take the laissez-faire approach of hands off? That's, it's business is business. Or are you thinking that Arlo should have been a bit more moral in his thinking, should have stuck by his morals stronger rather than accept the bag that was offered? And for some of that, though, it makes me just question. It's just like some people aren't in the position to be able to live their life like to the nth degree of their morals. You know what I mean? They can't be the extreme ideal of the person they want to be because, hey, you gotta get along with people. At the end of the day, it is a society. A society. What's that movie? But at what cost do you sacrifice that? Do you at what point? What is Arlo giving up? Is Arlo losing anything? Does Arlo lose credibility in this decision? Does he lose fans? I think he loses fans. Does he lose credibility? Let us know in the chat. I'm just as curious about the situation as you are. We're all new to the situation. I don't know what to think of it quite yet. I know that it's worthy of discussion. It's worthy of news. It's worthy of talking with you guys and seeing where. And it's interesting to see the wide swath of opinions we already have had. It's spanned the entire distance. We've seen people say don't care, and we've seen people say the Fire should fire him from his job. He should no longer be associated with Fire. We're seeing a whole swath of responses. I think it's very interesting, and I want to know where you guys stand in the comments. For right or for wrong, you don't have to necessarily defend your position. I'm just curious about if you feel like defending your position, go for it. We just want to facilitate some conversation, facilitate some discussion, and see what's going on and see how you guys are feeling about this, because for right or for wrong, Brian brings up a good point right here at the end of this article. Even though Arlo White's voice is associated with Chicago Fire, is it worth it for the Fire to keep continuing with his voice there? Is it worth it just for a few more podcasts and for a few more games for this? Well, the Fire have already made their decision. It would seem odd to come out tomorrow or the next day or later this week and to have a different decision. It would seem very reactionary to this. But would that be appropriate? Would that be an appropriate response? I'm not sure. Let us know in the comments below. I would hope, you don't want to call for people's jobs typically, right? You don't want to say a person should get fired, but here you do have Brian Sandelau saying in an indirect way that Fire should let go of Arlo White. I wonder if you guys agree with that decision, if you guys agree with that opinion or disagree, and let us know in the comments. We greatly appreciate you guys hanging out live or after the fact. We will catch you on the next Spitting Fire. All right, Fired Up Footballers, we will catch you later. Have a great one, and good luck with this. Well, let's get into the comments and let's have a good discussion. All right, everybody, have a good one. We'll catch you on the next stream. We'll see you on Wednesday at the very least. All right, Fired Up Footballers, later. Have a good one. And I'm out.